Okay, so my presentation was on prehistoric art, and I guess at the beginning I'll just kind of run you guys through basic evolution, because this presentation was intended to be for people who already had kind of a basic knowledge of things that happened thousands of years ago, which I don't expect you to know. So the evolution of humans, to kind of help you see what I'm talking about, I found a really complicated picture that may or may not actually be that helpful. The common ones that you've probably heard of, I highlighted in the red arrows, and it's on a timeline. The middle Paleolithic era it started about 300,000 years ago, and it's when we started to see a lot of characteristics that are present in modern humans. And on this timeline, which is on it's millions of years, the Middle Paleolithic era only started here, where I put this awkward little line. And so you can see that we haven't been doing what we've been doing for very long. Cro-Magnon, a lot of people have heard of Cro-Magnon. It's not on here because it's not technically a species or a subspecies, but it is important in what we'll be looking at. So these are, again, some of the more common ones that you may or may not have heard of. And, oops, go back. They go in order of evolution from the top along the bottom. That's me trying to be funny. Over here, that's Tom Cruise. Homo sapiens is what we are, so I don't know, humor. Australopithecus afarensis up here is the oldest known connection, the oldest known relative of humans. There's kind of a big gap between these two, and in around that area is where our missing link is. If you've heard of that, it's just we don't really know what happened in that area and how we jumped from one to the next. But we've got people working on it, and Homo sapiens is where we are now. We'll mostly be focusing on Homo erectus a little bit. Their pieces are really contradictory, and I'll show you those. So when did we start being artistic? The first undisputed, I guess I'll let you look at that down here. This I just thought was interesting to kind of show what I mean by artistic expression. It might be a little bit self-explanatory. But basically what this guy did is he was on a talk show and he had, I think, 2 minutes to paint a picture, and he did it upside down. So it looks completely random until he flips it over and you can see that it's actually a really cool portrait. Can everybody see from where I'm standing? No. No? I'll go back here. Okay. So I just did that to show that not everything that we kind of think is just random scratchings or could be abstract are as simple as they seem. But we started being artistic in and around the upper Paleolithic area. Around 45,000 years ago was the first point we saw undisputed displays of artistic expression. There are a lot that come from farther back than that, but they're very controversial because they don't look very artistic. So it's really hard to classify what counts as art and what doesn't, and it really depends on who you're talking to. Okay. And since the oldest confirmed artistic expression was from about 41,000 years ago, we're mostly talking about Cro-Magnon, which wasn't on the timeline before, but people recognize it, and Homo sapiens, which is us. And the species developed in different ways in different areas of the world. And Homo sapiens, again, is over here. That was Tom Cruise, if you remember from before. So the first thing that people usually think about when they think of any kind of prehistoric art is cave paintings. And there's definitely, you should think of cave paintings because it's one of the most important views into what life was like for people back then, because there was no spoken language, there was no written language, there was just pictures. The earliest known cave paintings were found in a cave in Spain and are about 41,000 years old. And those are these ones down here. It was mostly handprints and depictions of really large animals that were common in the area, but weren't hunted or really encountered that often So we're not sure why exactly they chose to pick, or they chose to depict those animals, because they didn't really have any significance for them other than that they might have looked cool and mystical. The second ones here are from France. They're a little bit younger, but a little bit more detailed as well. And we really don't know why they made cave paintings in the first place, other than to show what they were doing, or I don't know, because they were bored. You don't do much when you're sitting in a cave for your whole life. So theory suggests that everything from the fantasies of adolescent males who made up the majority of the population at the time. You can imagine if you don't live very long, their lifespan, I think, was only till about 25 or 30 years old. So mostly it was young people. And so a lot of depictions were probably of the fantasies or views of those people. And they can really give us an insight into what life was like back then and what kind of animals they would have encountered. These ones down here, is my pointer working? There it is. These ones down here, it's actually very interesting. Those are controversial because we thought we knew how old they were, but they actually depict a species of animal. It was kind of like an ostrich, I think, that had been extinct for thousands of years before these paintings were actually made. So we don't know if maybe they found fossils or if they're a lot older than we think they are. Excuse me. So how did they do it? They would make paint out of a lot of different substances. Ochre, which is a kind of, it's like a kind of rock that you can grind down and turn into a paint really easily. Or dirt, or blood, or urine, which is gross, but or berries, or anything like that. It would pretty much whatever you could smear on a wall they used to paint with. Later on, they would start to make brushes out of animal hair or plant life. But really early on, for the handprints, they would hollow out a bone or a stick and put paint in their mouth and blow it through the stick. And as I was researching this, I realized that that wouldn't be very easy. So bear with me for this. But that brings me to the strangest experiment I've ever done, and probably will ever do. And this is purely for science. Groan if you want to, but I did it. I decided to try it, and I made my own berry blend, and I tried it a bunch of different times, and I guess the 5th time worked the best. I tried to use a kind of tube thing. I just cut a paper towel roll and made it smaller. It didn't work. I have no idea how they did it. It totally goes over my head, but there's a general idea of maybe what it kind of would have looked like the first time they did it. Ta-da! Petroglyphs are another really, really commonly found type of art, usually in about the same places as paintings and for the same reasons. They're pretty much exactly the same, except that instead of painted onto the walls, they're scratched out, so you get to a lighter color underneath. And you get to show all the pictures, and they're usually used in tandem with paintings to just kind of emphasize color and things like that. And they would use bones or rocks or anything hard enough to carve into the rock. Venus figurines are probably my favorite thing that I researched. They're very, very cool. And they're a series of statues depicting the female body. They're very sexualized.